Hi guys, and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing well. So today's case, guys, is going to take us to the country of Kyrgyzstan, and I believe not many people know about any criminal cases for this country. And I came across this one when I was kind of doing a world search for different types of criminal cases, and this is a really sad case actually, and not a very well-known case, which is why I decided to cover it. So let's get into the video. Before I get into this, guys, I need to put out a disclaimer that there is going to be quite a high level of violence perpetrated in this, so just be aware of that before watching this video today. As I mentioned, guys, we are going to be visiting the country of Kyrgyzstan today, and we are going to be talking about a young lady named Burulai Turdaaly Kyzy. So Burulai was a 20-year-old medical student. She was living her best life in brackets. She had a boyfriend, I think he was about a year older, and they were both going to uni to study essentially to become doctors. Burulai, I believe, was still living at her parents' house. So they lived in an area of Kazakhstan called Sosnovka, and where she was going to university and her boyfriend was going to uni was called Bishkek, which is quite a big city. Okay, so she had a fairly standard life. She got on very well with her parents. She's going to uni, she's got a boyfriend, everything's fine, and she was a very intelligent girl as well. One day she's on the way to uni, you know, just doing her normal walk to uni, and this man decides to kidnap her. So basically this guy wanted to kidnap Burulai to force her to marry him, and Burulai didn't even know who this person was. It was just a random man, right? Now in Kyrgyzstan there is a tradition called alakachu, and alakachu is essentially means bride kidnapping. So there is a tradition that's been around for I think hundreds or thousands of years, where essentially men, when they want to get married, they go and take a bride. It could be someone they don't even know. They get that bride outside their house or walking in the street, wherever. They kidnap them, and then they tell the girl that she needs to marry them, and they won't return her to her parents until she accepts to essentially marry them. And this situation, guys, is very common in Kyrgyzstan. It was a situation where alakachu kind of died down, and there was less and less of it, and if people did it, they would get like a fine of £20, which quite frankly for kidnapping a woman that doesn't want to be kidnapped is, I don't know why the fine is £20, it's ridiculous. But anyway, and it kind of died down a bit, but then in the last like 10 years or so there's been a real resurgence of this situation, and it's the kind of situation where it's not taken a lot of the time seriously enough, as in it's an actual kidnap of a woman and the woman hasn't agreed to this, but by a lot of people, especially men, it's still seen as an important tradition of Kyrgyzstan, and it's just considered that even if it happens, the next day you just get on with your life basically. And often these situations, it could be where the bride still won't agree after hours and hours, and then the perpetrator will end up returning the bride to her family, and he will try to get the family to convince her that she needs to marry the guy, and that's kind of the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, sometimes these women are beaten or attacked, or in even worse cases, they're murdered because they refuse to marry someone that they've never even met before. And in other cases, actually, I didn't even get to that part yet, some women are sexually assaulted by this person who's kidnapped them that they don't know, and because of a kind of stigma of shame, sometimes the girl's parents will actually encourage the girl to marry the perpetrator that's just sexually assaulted her, because of the shame that could come to the family. Now in the case of Burulai, guys, because let's get back to Burulai's case in this story, in this criminal case. So she, as you can tell, guys, because I said she was a medical student, she was a highly intelligent woman. You know, I believe she was probably quite career driven. Her parents were like moving with the times as well, so they weren't people that are kind of like, you know, interested in their daughter being kidnapped for, you know, some practice from hundreds of years ago, right? They just want to live a standard life, okay? So what happened is Burulai's now being kidnapped by this man called Mars Budoshev, and Mars Budoshev was a mini bus driver in Bishkek, and this is how he saw Burulai one day, basically, when she was walking past, like, basically past her house. So this perpetrator, Mars Budoshev, has seen her walk past her house, so he actually knows where she lives. And she's on the way to uni, and that's when he gets her in his minibus thing or whatever and kidnaps her, and he takes her, I believe, to his house and is telling her, you need to marry me and this and this and this. And it's not where someone just kidnaps you and they're like just saying whatever. It's like they truly mean that you're gonna have to do that, else there's gonna be a problem. And Burulai's like, no, I'm not interested. And obviously Burulai has a boyfriend as well. And then after hours and hours and hours, this is in April 2018, he lets Burulai go and she returns to her parents' house. So after this situation occurs, Burulai's parents, so her mum and her dad, are really angry and distressed by the situation, as is Burulai. So they kind of have a discussion and they kind of come to an agreement, like a decision, that Burulai is going to go to her aunt's house, which is a bit more outside of that area, because it's probably going to be a bit more safe just for the time being. So Burulai goes to her aunt's house still in the month of April, and then in the month of May, around the 27th of May 2018, she decides to come back to her parents' house because they're doing, you know, all these different preparations actually for Ramadan. So because they're doing preparations for Ramadan, they're, you know, preparing food and everything, they need to go to the supermarket to get some things. So Burulai's like, fine, you know, I'll go and pick up some things. And now, because they haven't seen this guy Mars Budoshev hanging around for a while, they're thinking, oh, he's probably, you know, got tired of this and he's moved on or whatever. So Burulai's on the way to the supermarket now, and it's the evening, and who is there ready to take her again? Mars Budoshev. Now Burulai, this time, she's even more panicked actually than the first time, because she knows who this guy is now, she knows what he wants, and she kind of realizes, I think, that it could be a potentially worse situation than the first time, because the guy already knows that she's going to object to marrying him, and this could become complicated. So he kidnaps her again, and basically somehow she manages to get hold of her phone and quickly dial her father to alert him that this guy's taken her again. So Burulai's dad, he gets on the phone to the police quick smart to alert them, look, this guy has kidnapped my daughter now a second time, and I don't know where he's taking her and all of this. So now the police are actually on alert. So they go and find him, and they bring both Burulai and Mars Budoshev to the police station. When they get to the police station, the police officer that's on duty, or police officers, decide to put Burulai and Mars Budoshev in like one room together, like a holding room together. And firstly, I don't know why you would place a victim with a kidnapper in the same room together, and furthermore without any supervision at all. So apparently the officers have stepped out the room, they've closed the door, which is really weird. They've got no CCTV in there as well, and they've got no police officer in the room with both of them, right? So it's said that the police officers kind of thought, oh, maybe they're going to have a chat, hash this out, which quite frankly, if someone's kidnapped me, the last thing I'd want to do is sit down and have a good chat with that person. Do you know what I mean? That's not what I'd want to do personally. But anyway, this is what the officers thought. Let's leave them to have a nice little chat and see if they can resolve this issue between them. Now suddenly they start to hear a lot of shouting through the wall and the door, and there's raised voices and all of this kind of thing. And so after they can hear there's a lot of commotion, they go into, like, they open the door and go into the room, and what they discover is unbelievable. So Mars Budoshev has stabbed Burulai to death, and this is in quite a short time frame, right? And furthermore, he's then carved with a knife the initials of her and her boyfriend, because remember she had a boyfriend, onto Burulai. I don't know where exactly on her body, but he'd carved these initials onto her to kind of show her, you know, this is what you get for the way you've been with me, basically. And now, where this was a kidnapping case, this has now become a murder case, right? And this is not the first case of its kind in Kyrgyzstan. This has happened quite a few times where it's ended in a murder because the woman refuses to marry the guy, right? And because the laws have been so lax, remember guys, I said to you before that there's a fine of £20, equivalent to £20 if a man kidnaps a woman, right? Which, even though obviously we can understand that cost of living and salaries are different there, I don't know how £20 still is sufficient when you just kidnapped someone and no prison sentence. So there was a lot of outroar, and you know, people were outraged. Like, it was extremely shocking for not just women but men, like the whole population, still to see this case, because it was so extreme, of course. And a lot of the population, I think, were thinking, including Burulai's parents, like, this man's just going to get away with he's going to get probably a little slap on the wrist, some fine or something, and he's just killed our daughter, right? So there was a lot of people protesting, petitioning after this happened to Burulai in 2018. And there has also been another case of a woman called, I believe, Azada as well, where it was very similar situation to Burulai, actually. Because there was so much petitioning and protesting, I mean, even prior to this, around the time of 2013, actually, the laws technically changed, where a man would get between 3 and 10 years in prison if he murdered a woman in this circumstance, which, quite frankly, I don't know how you can give a man 3 to 10 years of prison for doing something like this. I mean, 3 to 10 years is for aggravated robbery and things like that. Like, 3 to 10 years for this, for murder, okay. So everyone thought, right, either he's just going to get minimum 3 years or he's going to get a fine or something. He's not going to get much, you know. So anyway, the case went to trial in December of 2018. So to be honest, from the time it happened to the actual trial, it wasn't that long, considering, because some cases, especially murder cases, there's so much detail and evidence to find and everything that it can take sometimes years. So this happened at the end of May, and the trial started in December 2018, and it finished quite quickly because there was so much, you know, dumbfounding evidence in this case. And Mars Budoshev was actually sentenced to 20 years in prison. Now guys, honestly, when I recount some cases like this, especially where it's violence towards women, and I'm not saying there's not violence towards men, because that also does exist as well, of course, but in these cases of violence towards women, every time I recount one of these cases, the one thing that always shocks me, I mean, the whole cases that go on are shocking, but the one thing that is a common denominator in all these cases I tend to cover is the shortness of the actual sentencing that the murderer or perpetrator gets, which is just really shocking. And I feel like there is really a pattern, especially across kind of ex-USSR countries, so Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, etc., where a lot of the time domestic violence or violence towards women has been decriminalised, and you've got women being kidnapped or sexually assaulted or, you know, attacked or abused, and the perpetrators are not brought to justice in the correct manner. I forgot to mention, guys, I think that Burulai was 20 at the time that this happened, and Mars Budoshev was 29, and that means when Mars Budoshev comes out of prison, he's going to be like, what, 49? So he's still got literally his whole life. Like, I'm 41, I'm going to be 42 this year, and you can still go on to go to work, get married, have kids, even if you're a man at that age. So he's still going to be living his best life, where you've got Burulai's parents and family and her partner, technically, who are still going to be probably grieving years down the line for her loss. Furthermore, I have never come across any criminal case, I think, ever in my life, where a victim and the perpetrator are put in the same room together and left alone in a police station with no CCTV, no police officer in the room, no security guard, nothing, and told, okay, yeah, sort it out between you, have a chat. Like, honestly, when I read that bit alone of this case, it's like, it's very obvious what can potentially happen. And why is there no officer in the room? Like, you just think you're going to go back to the reception or to your, you know, your desk or your office and leave a victim and a perpetrator together to, you know, just sit down at the table in the room and just hash it out or something, is the weirdest concept. Now guys, I come across often different cases, and you guys would have seen on my channel already, I look at different practices as well in countries that are kind of, you know, archaic or shouldn't really exist anymore because they can harm people physically, mentally, etc. And there are countries where this is still, you know, things are perpetrated as part of the culture of what the country should do when they're actually harming people. And if something is harming someone, it doesn't matter whether this was practiced hundreds or thousands of years ago. If it's harmful physically or mentally to the person, it's a practice which clearly needs to be abolished. And that, guys, was the case of Burulai Turdaaly Kyzy. So please leave your comments and feedback down below, guys, in regards to what you think of this case. Have you heard of this case actually before, or cases like this as well before? You can leave me any strange international criminal case suggestions or suggestions for international cults as well, and I'll take those into consideration when doing my videos. And I hope to see you very, very soon, of course, for another video.